Well, my name is Iyaba Ibo Mandingo. If you ask my mother that question, she would say, my name is Kenny Ethel George de Cruz, which is the name she gave me at birth. I changed my name in college to Iyaba Ibo Mandingo because I wanted something that represented me as an African, which is what I embrace culturally. I'm from Antigua in the Caribbean. Antigua and Barbuda, actually, they're sister islands. I was born and raised and grew up until I was 11 on Antigua. My father is Guyanese, so I guess I would say that I'm an Antiguan Guyanese. Tell me immigrant story. Well, like that's kind of the story, you know. Well, I guess the immigrant story would be me here. So for the first, from 1980 to 1988, we were illegal aliens. You know, my mother had a fake name and a fake social security card, as well as you know, a couple of her siblings. One of her sisters had come in the early 70s, so she had her papers, and we were all trying to get to that process. And then in 1986, 87, I believe, Reagan had the amnesty deal with anybody that could prove they had been here since 1980, they allowed you to stay. And so my mother had all our school records and all this stuff. And so that's what we were able to go and present to the country, to the government, and we were given permanent resident alien, you know, or alien cards, we used to call them back then. Unfortunately for me, at the time, I had already gone off to college. By then, it was, you know, I left my freshman year was fall of '88. Going off to college, met a wonderful white woman. We had a child. We got pregnant that for our freshman year. Her father was extremely racist. The town was extremely racist. And the really long story short is I was arrested. And at the beginning, they were accusing me of raping her, even though she was my girlfriend. So by the time my file came up to the government, they said that because I had a charge like that on my record, that I was not eligible to become a citizen or a resident alien. And that story is, you know, the way the community supported me, all the things I had to go through, and finally getting my residency is sort of how little old Iyaba Ibo Mandingo became international. Because when I was arrested by the government after 9/11, the news sort of trickled out to the world little by little, and people from all over the place were, you know, calling for interviews, and I was meeting people all over the way. And that's actually how I've been invited around the world, was from that one incident and the poem that sort of sparked that whole, you know, that whole retribution from the government, if you will. So that's my immigrant story. And the other part is the joy of being an immigrant in America. There are wonderful things about being, you know, I met wonderful teachers here who really helped me to tap into my natural gifts, you know, as a painter and a writer, especially. Teachers that wouldn't let me sort of hide out in the crowd and stuck me out and kept pushing me and challenging me. So that's also part of my immigrant story. I have 5 beautiful children and, you know, a grandchild coming. So that's also a beautiful part of my American story. And wonderful friends here, you know, and wonderful things that you know, I teach. I've been teaching for 30 years. Actually, today is a beginning of the new school year. So this is year 31, off we go. And yeah, so immigrant story. What is your idea of the American dream? What are the obstacles you find you have encountered? And do you believe that it can be gained, or you must earn it? Boy, you're asking some tough questions today, brother. American dream. Well, I am still a romantic. So yes, I believe in the idea of the American dream. Maybe not the same one I did as a boy, because as a boy, I literally thought that all you had to do was get off the plane and then everything would be fine. Gold on the trees, you know, juice in the rivers. I thought it was just going to be a beautiful, beautiful place. And I definitely have had moments where it felt like an American nightmare. But I think that's probably what reality is. You know, you can't get the dream, you can't get the good without the bad, because, you know, yin and yang, balance, the planet is balanced, the earth is about balance. So an American dream, yes, but also an American nightmare at times. And maybe the nightmares are what I would describe as obstacles. You know, like I talked already about, you know, having my first child with a white woman and the way her family reacted, and that was my first time in jail. But also all of the subtle things, like, you know, America has this tradition of the latest immigrant being the punching bag. And I don't know, it's like, I guess it reminds me of the tradition, you know, when you're a freshman in high school and you walk in and the seniors are there teasing you, and you're so upset and so intimidated, you say, I would never do that. And 4 years later, here you are in the hallway as a senior, teasing the freshmen. And what's your excuse? Well, I had to go through it, so they should go through it too. So when I got here, I talk about the biggest pushback I got was from Black Americans. I don't like to say it, but it was true. And I got older and got into history, I realized why. Because that was a tradition. When the Irish came, and they graduated out of the ghetto, they did it behind the Jews, and then the Jews looked down on them. And then the Italians came, and it was a time when the Italians couldn't be let into Manhattan because they were Italian. So they came, and then when the Italians now were here, and then here comes the African Americans from the South during the 40s and the Great Migration, and now they're moving in, and now the Italians are fighting on them because the Italians have to make it, oh look, there's somebody that we can now look down on, so we will rise. So when Black Americans saw us coming here, in my opinion, I think they thought we were coming to take their place. So we got the most xenophobic thing, that word, fear of hatred, fear and hatred of foreigners, was from them, because they were most immediate contact. I saw them in schools. I was being teased, banana boat, all those kind of sugar cane, all them kind of thing, coconut, all those things came from them. You know what I mean? And I now understand the reason they did that was because they were at the bottom of the stairs. So when they saw us, they were like, oh, look, just like the Italians did with them. Oh, look, somebody that I could step on now. So they pushed them down. And so to me, that's the tricky part of the American dream that you have to navigate, because you can't escape it. The minute they see your features, or they hear whether it's a Latino accent, or it's an Eastern European accent, or it's an African accent, the minute they pick up on that, they put you in these categories right away. And if you're not paying attention, and you're so caught up on wanting to be a part of here, then you submit, and one day you wake up and realize that maybe you haven't spoken your native language in years. Maybe you haven't eaten anything from your native place because you're going so crazy to try to be American and have hamburger and french fries and fried chicken and mashed potatoes that you forgot the last time you had, fungi or dukana or any of those kind of things, So for me, that was the biggest thing for me, is the American dream when it comes to obstacles. The obstacles are the reality. I guess I'll finish with this. When I was 19, I had Malik, my oldest, and he moved out here because his mother ran away from her parents, and so they moved out here, and he was going to school here. And when he was maybe I was 23, he was in the second grade or fourth grade, third grade, and they went to the Statue of Liberty. It was my first time going, and as an artist, I loved the sculpture and what it was. And outside, there was a woman. You could see her anatomy, her breasts, her hips, her fingernails, her lips. And when you went inside, you saw the mechanics of it, the screws and the bolts, and it didn't look like a woman inside. And that's America. So that's my final answer. The Statue of Liberty, maybe not the way they intended, but she's the perfect symbol of America to me, because on the outside, it's very beautiful and picturesque, and you can imagine a million things. And when you go inside, there's stairs that go up, and the closer up, the farther up you go, the closer they get, and the more constricted you are. And when you get to the top, it's so close, and you feel claustrophobic. And then you can't look out. The windows look down. And maybe because I was a poet, I saw it like that. And people were literally passing out and not being able to make it to the top, like holy metaphor. But then inside you saw the rust, you saw the old screws, and then the hand that went up in the air, where that all those Italians from the first sort of European immigrants from the 30s and 20s that came, in the beginning of 100 years ago, the beginning of the 20th century, that arm that they used to be able to go up and get a better perspective where they could actually look out, it's closed now. I mean, holy metaphor. So I could not go up there. And when you think about America, that's just true in America. I can't go where they are allowed to go because I am a new immigrant. So that was the biggest, for me. So that is my story of American dream in a nutshell. What is the one object or a photograph or something that you brought with you to remember Antigua? Am I saying that correctly? Antigua? Yes, that is exactly it, brother. Antigua. One thing I brought, well, a picture of my grandmother that all of us have. She was a powerful woman, powerful woman. And I mean, just her will, her sense, because I'm one of the oldest, the first grandchildren, I'm from the first batch. So I remember her before her stroke. But even with the stroke that made her left side paralyzed, she still sewed, made clothes, at least 5 hours a day. And she could still beat your behind. She could still pick up a brush and throw it across the room, and she had a look that could make you drop something in the supermarket, just to look. So the strength of will, I think, and that's inspired. And she had 3 sons and 4 daughters that survived. She had 9, but only 7 survived. And she especially my aunts and my mother, not only do they all look like her now, that they all, over 60 and over 65, but they all have her spirit, and my younger cousins don't remember her. She actually died the morning of my 9th birthday. Yes. So, yes. She's for me, like my shrine upstairs that I showed you before, she's a centerpiece of my shrine. Her spirit is still very, very powerful. And I'm always aware that she's there. And when I feel any kind of, I call her. So that's the other thing I guess we brought was, even though my mother and them are very Christian, my grandmother weaved the two things. So they would say, like in our country, they would say, you go to the minister on Sunday, but you go to the Obyaman on Saturday. The Obyaman is like the bushman, the shaman. So my grandmother mixed both worlds. So she would, when we were sick, you would go and get medicine from the drugstore, but she would also boil bush. Like when you have fever, she'll get fever grass, what they call lemongrass here. She would get lemongrass and give you that to drink before she would give you aspirin. Do you think your ethnicity, who you are, you think it plays a role in your work today as an artist? Absolutely, brother. I think that is like at the core of who I am. I went to school here in America, so I got art history the way everyone did. I learned about European art. I learned about mostly white men that painted. One or two white women as the 20th century kind of got midway through, and they actually acknowledged that there were people other than white men that painted. But for me, when I started making a trend, I remember in my senior year in my painting class, one of my white friends and colleagues said, how come you're always painting black people in all your paintings? And I'm like, look, didn't we just sit through 2 semesters of art history? He goes, yeah. I said, how many paintings of black people did you see? He couldn't think of any. I, of course, remember the one we saw, because I remember that was the only one we saw over like 3,000 slides. It was a painting painting of a Moor by Rembrandt. That's it. That's the only one I saw, 3,000 plus slides. So that was my response. So I told him, I think I would be doing my great-great-grandchildren and the children of the future an injustice to not flood there are enough paintings with white people as subjects. So I want them to be everybody. And then the more I grew, the more I wanted it to be not only black people, but Caribbean people and African people. So they started to see the traditions, and we started to identify ourselves. Like even now, as a painter, one of the things I love is to go to tag sales and garage sales and find these old sort of gilded frames, the gold and bowls and the bronze ones, and paint in those, and in the most flippant kind of way, because there was a time historically when you would have never seen a black subject in a frame so beautiful. So to me now, to go and get these frames and put us in those frames and drip the paint on the frame, it's a way of sort of declassifying that rank that frame used to have once upon a time for me. So I can't think of a way that who I am and how I identify as an African Caribbean man, I can't think of a way that doesn't play a role, especially with the poetry, but also the things I write as a writer, as a playwright, as an actor, the things that I'm drawn to, that I want to perform and gives me, I have like a desire to jump at. Those are by far are absolutely the things that spark that the most for me. So yes, absolutely. I changed my name from Kenny Ethel George de Cruz, which is, Kenny is English, Kenneth, Ethel is French, George or Jorge is Spanish, and de Cruz is Dutch. So changing my name to Iyaba Ibo Mandingo. Iyaba is Nigerian, Ibo is Nigerian, and Mandingo is Mandinka. So that's all West Africa. Being a history student, I didn't want somebody to stumble upon a painting or my book in 500 years and be going, was this man, was he an English, Spanish, French, Dutchman? No, he was an African. So it absolutely plays a big role in my work. Well, here's a question for you that I think will give your head a nice spin. If you could go back in time, what would you say to your younger self? Yikes. Wow. Now that is a serious question, brother. Indeed it is, indeed it is. Fall in love with yourself earlier. Yeah, you made me think about that one, bro. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. fall in love with yourself earlier than you did. I was in my 30s before I fell in love with myself, and then the complete sort of embrace of me, the lips and the nose and the complexion, was maybe 7 years. So I call Africa. Going to Africa was like, is the first time I felt, wow, like this is why I look like this. Look, my grandfather's nose. Oh my God, look, my mother's forehead. Oh my God, that lady walks like my aunt. It's the first time I realized that I look like this because I come from a place and from a people that look like this. The forehead, the way the beard is grown. So that was this thing for me that was like the completion, because, I was a really horrible mama's boy. So my mother was able to really corral is the right word. Is the word a son should use, as opposed to any other word that may have derogatory meaning. She was able to corral with love, because she wanted the best. But she was able to corral him because I was so adherent. I did it. And for so many, one day I woke up, I was in somewhere doing poetry across on the other side of the country, and I'm getting ready to make a decision. It wasn't a life-threatening decision, but it was a decision about, I think I was going to buy something and it was expensive. And I'm hearing myself, my mother in my voice, in my head, saying what she thought of that. And not only that, I'm hearing, because she would always call her sisters and they powwow, they have a conference, and then she comes back to me and I can say, Mommy, Auntie Kathleen said that, Auntie Gloria said that, Auntie Bonnie said that, and you said this. So I called her, and when I walked out, so I was like, Mommy, you know what, Mommy? I don't want to be your boy's son anymore. I want to be your man's son. So, and I was about 37 years old at the time when that happened, so just, that's what I would say to my youngest, especially 11-year-old Kenny, who used to be called ugly black African and Idi Amin and all those things when he first got here. Fall in love with yourself earlier. That's it. Because everything else, I think everything else is going to come, everything else is going to happen. But the one thing that I think slowed my growth the most was this thing. And the insecurities about looking like this and not be able to run away from. There's nothing you can do for your complexion. There's nothing you can do for your lips. There's nothing you can do. Well, now you can go and have them changed and altered and, I guess, lightened. But that, for me, there was no way to escape that. And so that meant being a virgin until I was 19 years old. That meant being afraid to engage girls until I was in my 20s in that kind of way. That meant, being teased and not liking the face I saw in the mirror for years. That meant, the beard went on first to hide some of the face because I didn't like the face, you know what I mean? So fall in love with yourself earlier. Man, you just gave me I might end up writing a poem about that. I don't think I've ever pondered that question like that. Yeah. Fall in love with yourself earlier. Well, brother, you have blown my mind. I am so humbled and grateful for your ability to your willingness to just have this conversation and be so forthcoming with your words and your answers. It was my pleasure. You made it easy, brother. It was like I was talking to myself. Thanks, my man.